I actually did travel 1,650 miles for a $50 ham sandwich, but I came away with so much more. And that's because I took a trip to Dallas, Texas for VidSummit 2023. But let's start with the ham sandwich, because that whole trip was an entire adventure, and I did fit in there a lot of food. And that's starting right now. VidSummit is an annual event run by derryx and MrBeast that brings together video creators and entrepreneurs to learn about the latest trends on YouTube and video making. The event features keynote presentations, networking opportunities, and most importantly, ham sandwiches. The first day was basically travel and registration, and I'm gonna rewind back to dinner later on as far as that goes, because at registration I got that voucher for the ham sandwich. Now taking it back just a little bit more, when I actually bought my ticket to VidSummit, I decided to go with the box lunch because I figured $50 for 2 days to have lunch kind of all under control and already taken care of was probably a good idea. That convenience would allow me to do a little bit more networking and attend some of the sessions. And while you hit that like button, I'll tell you that was probably the worst decision I made the entire week as far as the VidSummit 2023 conference. And here's why. For $25, the meal included a basic sandwich, about 4 ounces of deli ham, some American cheese, some romaine lettuce, and that was on a simple white bread. There was also a white chocolate macadamia cookie, and from this detail, I can ascertain that the kitchen is run by the same catering company that runs the kitchen at my work. There was a bag of chips in there, crunchy Cheetos, an apple, and that's basically it. The sandwich was dry, and by dry, I mean even the mayo packet that was inside there couldn't save it. I really don't want to dump on this too hard, and that's because as you'll see through the rest of this video, with the exception of one other bad thing that happened, my VidSummit experience was amazing. But taken in a vacuum, even if I paid $10 for this lunch, I would have been pretty disappointed, let alone paying $50 for it, or $25 for 2 days. And don't think putting a fancy packet of Grey Poupon helps out there either. But the trek to Dallas started Tuesday at 8 a.m. at Albany International Airport. For the first time ever, I walked straight through TSA no problem, and as I got through, there was no line at Chick-fil-A. Since they had a cold brew coffee option, I went with a spicy chicken biscuit meal. It was dry as hell, but the cold brew was good. I really hate flying, but it was fine. After rushing in Baltimore to get to my connecting flight with like 2 minutes to spare, I landed in Dallas at about 3 p.m. There was a little bit of a snafu finding the car service, but I finally made it to the hotel. Really nice room, but I dropped off my bags and I headed right to the convention center. I had no idea what to expect as far as registration, so I didn't want to leave anything to chance. Strangely, the first person I ran into was Nick Nimmin, and if you don't know Nick, he's essentially the closest thing that I have to a YouTube coach here. I hang out in his live streams every week. Then the next person I ran into was Doug Hewson, who also hangs out in Nick's streams. So I ended up waiting in line for registration with Doug and another guy who goes by Shark Scrapper, and that took a while. The way they had the line set up was really interesting. There were no dividers, however, there were definitely like snaking lines going through. It's hard to describe. While waiting, I actually met Pat Flynn for the first time, and I saw JP Lambiase, formerly of Healthy Junk Food. After registration, we grabbed a quick dinner with Doug and Shark Scrapper at a place called Bar Louie, which was maybe 2 or 3 blocks away from the convention center. I wound up going with a hot honey fried chicken sandwich, and that was because I really needed to redeem that really dry Chick-fil-A sandwich I had for breakfast. The sandwich at Bar Louie was fine. We made our way back to the convention center for the kickoff party, and it really looked like a lot of fun, but I was totally beat. I don't do very well with travel at all. On the way out, I ran into Nick Nimmin again, and we took what is probably the worst picture in history. In the shuttle back to the hotel, I met Justin Ziegler. We got to know each other a little bit, and the next morning I ran into him at breakfast, and we chatted about YouTube for a little while in the lobby at the hotel. That was probably the best part of breakfast. As far as what it actually was, your standard continental Holiday Inn breakfast. And it was a buffet, definitely like on the below average side of food, but you know what? It's one of those things where I figured that was just fuel for the day and one less thing to think about. And I loaded up because who the hell knew what this ham sandwich was gonna be? I had my assumptions about the ham sandwich, but I had no idea what it was gonna be. So in the morning, on the first day of the conference, the line to get into the main hall was insane. And when those doors opened, all hell broke loose. People running to get to the front of the stage, other people just getting kind of crowded in. It was crazy. I did find a seat kind of close to the stage, which was really cool. And pretty quickly, they got right into the content. derryx, MrBeast, Preston Plays, Michelle Kari, an editing panel hosted by Hayden Hillier-Smith. It was around this time that I really started getting hungry. I already told you what happened next with this ham sandwich, so we're not going to go too far into it here. But after I packed up from filming, I ran into Dan Patrick Norton, a buddy of mine. He edits for Pat Flynn's Pokemon channel, Deep Pocket Monster. And it turns out Noah actually sent me to the conference with a couple of Pokemon cards for Pat to sign. And I had no idea if I was going to see Pat, but Pat was actually there with Dan. Pat not only signed those cards for Noah, he also threw in a Deep Pocket Monster sleeve for Noah, which I think is also signed. And he allowed me to film him actually doing all this so I could send the video to Noah. And my son was totally pumped when he saw that video.
Thank you so launch pad.
After that, I got into a little hardcore networking. Randy Santel, Mark Walters, Cooking with AB, and then it got back to the sessions. Roberto Blake, Renee Ritchie, Zach King, who closed out the day. On my way out, I got to talk to Nick Nimmin for a little bit, which was awesome. We got a better picture, and then I met a Frenchie on the way out. And at that time, it was dinner time. So I walked a little farther than that Bar Louie, and I found a Mexican place called Pacheco, which is gonna get its own analysis video here. But I sat down for a really big meal of birria ramen, some tacos, and a margarita to round out the whole thing. Lori from The Icing Artist was there, and she was dining with her husband and a couple of people from the conference. We chatted for a couple minutes while I was waiting for my taxi, and they were super nice. The next day, same crappy hotel breakfast, and more VidSummit. Mindy McKnight, Hope Scope. Nick Nimmin gave a talk about how to future-proof your YouTube channel. And the rest of the afternoon was highly technical. I did use my second depressing sandwich voucher, but what I should have done was went to one of those food trucks that was parked right outside of the convention center. After a presentation from Patty Galloway, which really hit home, there was a final keynote by Lisa Billiou, and the conference ended with a lot of energy. They were throwing gifts off the stage and stuff. It was insane. As it all ended though, as bittersweet as it was, I was really hyped on getting moving to create some content. So I decided to strut out of the venue, and I continued that strut until I found a good subject to analyze. So I walked and walked and walked until I found a place called Grimaldi's. I actually have some history with Grimaldi's, but I never actually ate there. Back in the year 1990, I stayed with an uncle in Brooklyn, and for the entire trip, he was hyping taking me to this pizza place that was under the Brooklyn Bridge, and they made coal-fired pizza, and what he told me was they only made a set number of doughs for the day, and after that, that was it. They closed the door. We never actually ended up going. Now known as Grimaldi's, they've expanded to a pretty decent-sized chain in the US. To me, that was the perfect thing to cover. I ordered far too much pizza, and I managed to get myself kicked out. But I had a good time, and I did get just enough footage to do an analysis of that place, and that's coming soon, so subscribe. If getting kicked out of a restaurant wasn't enough, I got back to my hotel room and it was 100 degrees on the thermostat. Not even kidding. I ended up having to switch rooms because the air conditioner broke at some point during the day and was forcing out hot air into the room. Now I had been there for 3 days already, so that meant I had to pack in 100 degrees and then move my room to another place. No footage because I was pissed. The next morning was a really early one for travel. During my layover in Baltimore, I got to try Arby's really crappy new cheesesteak, and for good measure, I threw in some of their mozzarella sticks, which actually weren't bad at all. Connecting flight to Albany, and after that amazing trip, I was really glad to be home. While at VidSummit, they announced that 2024 was going to be in the same venue, but I'm going to keep my eyes out to see if they put a little work into that sandwich. And just so we're clear, the event was a perfect 10 out of 10. The sandwich and boxed lunch though, sorry, solid 1 out of 10. While in the moment at VidSummit, I put together a few YouTube shorts of these food adventures throughout the days. And you can click into that playlist right here. And if this is the first time you're seeing me in a video, I'm going to leave a link to more food analysis right here, and you can check that out as well.